Set on the Louisiana-Mississippi border, the Honey Island Swamp is one of the largest ecosystems of its kind in the world. Its people and its folklore go back for hundreds of years, all the way back to the Choctaw and Acalapisaw people, and eventually to French Creole culture that we find today. All these people have tales of a hairy, bipedal animal skulking through the Honey Island Swamp. Aptly named the Honey Island Swamp Monster, descriptions of it range from a hairy man-like creature to a large baboon, and even something more reptilian in nature. Join us, the Southeast Bigfoot Research Organization, as we tackle one of the United States' oldest cryptids. I'm Kazari Okora, and this is Jaster and Win, and we're finally back from our holiday break.
At least as a full show, right, baby?
Yeah, Jaster thankfully held the fort down with a couple of bite-sized videos while I was swamped with work towards the end of November and all of December. It was brutal. But thankfully, everything's leveling back out now, and we're finally able to reconvene for some recording, and we're talking about something we've been planning for at least a good 2 or 3 months, I want to say.
We've been waiting, and we know you guys have been listening and wanting more things that aren't necessarily Bigfoot, so this is a Bigfoot-adjacent episode. Let's go ahead and throw it out there. It did take a little bit to bring the boat back around from wherever the hell we had it the last time. I had to get it out the impound lot.
Yeah, I kind of forgot where I left it, and, well, when I finally remembered it wasn't there anymore, well, you know.
By the time they asked me about that subprime mortgage, subprime loan on it, I already had it in the water, and I'm out in the swamp now, so here we are, guys.
Yep.
Yeehaw.
Yeah. You know, this is one that's kind of always hovered around in the back of my imagination. Because of the Monster Quest episode on it way back when.
See, I only recently heard of this monster. Like, that's kind of crazy to me. Is I watched a bunch of Monster Quest. It just must not have been one that
How did you miss that one?
I might not have remembered it, honestly.
Ah, well, there was this one shot, I think, of an alleged photograph of it peeking over, like, looking over the top of, like, some bushes or something, and it had a very distinct face, or about as distinct as a blob squatch can get in a photograph that was allegedly from, like, the 1970s. And I don't know, it just kind of stuck in my imagination.
Right.
Plus, like, Honey Island Swamp Monster, that's some good branding right there.
It comes with it. Like, oh my goodness. Like, it's a big, large place, too. Like,
it really is.
As far as a geographic location for something like this to exist, this is it. Like, this is about as it gets this far south of the Mason-Dixon. I'm not even lying. Like, you have a hard time getting out here with fan boats.
Mm-hmm.
People are in here living this life. Now, like, there are plenty of parts of the swamp where you can just live a regular life in it, but there are that many more places out there that it is very hard to walk in, and some places are impossible to walk in.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most interesting cryptid cases I've looked into because the twists and turns that I've experienced looking at this thing is crazy. And I've went down the rabbit hole. Like, I've even looked into 3 or 4 different interviews with people that are adjacent to it, in it. I've looked into all of the on-the-ground stuff that's happened to it, and I've started to get a bit of a profile for what we've got going on here. And I'm pretty confident when I'm saying that I think we got a Gugwe. I think we confidently can say that. We're not looking at Bigfoot.
Jaster was keeping me abreast of everything he was finding as he was researching, because our main way we communicate when I'm busy with work is Jaster will dump any interesting info he finds in my DMs, and I will come back to review it later, and then, like, maybe send him a couple thoughts on it. And I feel really bad because I can't give it the time of day I should, but I work in a job where I have to be kind of attentive.
Actively.
So it's not, you know, unfortunately, I cannot be sitting on the phone scrolling through the, you know, essays that he drops in my DMs.
I get into it. I don't know what
else
to say.
He does. So, but I believe I think we're starting off with an audio bit tonight, aren't we?
I was wanting to start actually with some photographs. I wanted to kind of start from the beginning.
Photographs.
Okay.
Okay.
Kind of from the
All right.
beginning.
We're stepping outside the outline we wrote. All right.
All right. So let's wind it on back to the early 60s, maybe late 50s. Okay.
Right.
A man named Harland Ford is out in the Honey Island swamp, and he sees this large, upright, long-snouted individual in the woods, and he notices it, freaks out. This thing notices him, stands up, and leaves. And what most people would probably think is what he thought. What the heck is that? Right? And so he goes on to reach out to the news. He goes in and start doing his own investigation. And about the time he starts getting media coverage on this monster, he's got footprints. Okay, and I've got them up here on the screen. We'll go ahead and let y'all have a look at them. Okay, these are pretty wild looking footprints, right? Like
they really are.
I ain't never seen nothing like that before. Like that's something like out of the swamp monster from Doug back in the day. Like that's what it reminds me of. You know,
that's
what I mean?
A throwback right there.
Like, oh my goodness. So, long story short, everybody goes in there. They're covering this. Many people go and they say that they also have had encounters of something similar to this. Okay, even In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy did an episode on this, and we'll get into that a little bit later. However, long story short, this attracted the ever-present mind of M.K. Davis. Okay, now I don't know how much we really went into his work on the show or how much we think about him. However, when it comes to people with boots on the ground, cryptozoological experience, and has a quick mind for any sort of buffoonery that might occur, he's probably one of the best ones to have on the scene. Okay, we love his work.
Yeah.
And this guy has some of the most compelling modern Bigfoot evidence when you look at it in context. So
I do think M.K. Davis can get into the weeds a little bit, though, sometimes.
He can. And I think in order to look into this monster at all, you got to be a little in the weeds. Okay?
Fair enough.
So
I would be lying if I said I disrespected M.K. Davis.
I think as far as the woo goes, I think he's tolerant. I don't think he's 100% in it. Like, there are times even in this interview that I'm going to reference where he was kind of more like, well, let's let them look at it. Like referring to the people that we're talking about. So he's about as reasonable as it gets for his part in the Bigfoot discussion. And when he gets down there, he's got a couple of people with him, and as they're out there in the swamp looking for this monster, they come across an eerie discovery. Okay, an old campsite, not too far away from the campsite that they're currently in, and it looks like there's campfire in there. It's been weathered and worn, like it's been a little while since somebody's been there. So they're poking around at this old campsite, and in the submerged water, from what I understand, the Small Town Monsters crew has the full story on this, but to my understanding, they find a sandal that has a taped up taxidermied alligator foot on the sole of it. And when you line up the Honey Island Swamp Monster prints to this sandal with a freaking gator foot attached to it, you got a match. Now, this is something that had been confirmed, not just by M.K. Davis, but by multiple people there. We got him, okay? You know?
Right.
Cut to the meme.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I'll just go ahead and put it there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
When the smoke all settles, he leaves, and he thinks to himself, we've got ourselves a hoax. I bagged it, right? So,
right. I mean, I'd be patting myself on the back if I found something like that, you know.
I mean,
So I don't particularly blame him for,
it's important
you know,
for
calling
any
a spade.
researcher.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like, if for anybody to respect the work that we're doing in the Bigfoot world, any of us, you got to call out the bullshit when you see it. Like,
Right.
That's just true. That's just what you got to do. And so he goes in, he writes his piece about it. The evidence comes out. Harland Ford hoaxed these prints. Okay? Now, some time passes. And for one reason or another, his wife has work in the area. And for one reason or another, they didn't fly. He's driving back. Okay? So he's in the Honey Island swamp. They don't know. No one in the Harland Ford family knows that he's there. Nobody associated with him knows that he's there. So he's going to pick out a spot that they didn't show him, and he's going to walk in. He's going to see what he can find. Now, we don't necessarily need to point out why this is a good tactic, you know, going in and making sure that these guys are indeed hoaxing you, or making sure that there's nothing going on, or making sure that there's nobody that knows that you're out there looking for cryptid evidence, because a lot of the times if somebody around hears about it, somebody's going to go, you know, it would be funny if we just put a bunch of fake prints out there. You know, it happens a lot. So, interview that we're going to bring up with World Bigfoot Radio with Duke, who's another person that I like. He gets a little in the weeds. He gets a lot in the weeds. But, like, it's an entertaining show. I like it, and I've listened to it a lot, and I've listened to him a lot when he's on Sasquatch Chronicles. So, it's definitely worth a listen. This interview that he has with MK Davis is totally worth your time. Now, he goes in there, and he sees an 18 to 20 inch print, and he's got it on camera. He got multiple shots with his GoPro on it. Now, he said, admittedly, because this was kind of a spur of the moment idea, and because he just kind of was in the area, he didn't bring plaster cast with him, especially trying to walk in on the swamp like that with a plaster cast kit and a GoPro. He didn't feel that confident. And at this point, he's getting on a little bit in years, so I completely understand. Now, he goes in there. He sees this 18 to 20 inch three-toed print, okay? All of a sudden, he's got to rethink everything. Because, yeah, this guy hoaxed these prints, right? But the prints that he's seen weren't no freaking 18 to 20 inches. Those look like maybe 12 to 14 inch tracks. I mean, they were made with a sandal, with a taxidermied alligator foot, right? So,
yeah,
this completely throws everything off the base. Now, I'm going to throw in a quote right here.
And when I saw it, you know, I had looked at Harland Ford's tracks many, many times, and I said, this can't be. I've got to go and take back everything that I said about it not existing.
But like what MK Davis just said there, like, this is what he considers to be one of the biggest mistakes that he's made in his career. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake. I think it's the correct thing that he's bringing it forward, that he has seen things afterwards to kind of reopen the case. But calling a spade, I don't necessarily think is a mistake. Now, the description can kind of vary. 9 times out of 10, these people aren't getting a good look at the face of the creature. A lot of the times, you're getting a lot of reports of this thing swimming in the swamp. Or this thing...
That's pretty wild.
Like, there's one guy by the name of Ted Williams. We'll get into him later. That's exactly how he's seen 2 of them. One of the only accounts that I'd heard of where the guy, like the reporter, had seen 2 of the creatures, not just 1. And the fun part about it is that he reported them doing forward strokes. So in order to do that, you need a rotator cuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's only 2 suspected things that could be, either a human or something else. So
yeah,
the bigger part of it is that this blew open the doors. Like, whenever people now look at the Honey Island Swamp, they're looking at it in a larger scope because people have this legend of the monster. They've got this, like, there's this big legend going around the entire area about it. And
right,
outside,
because if there's one thing that rural communities with a sagging economy will always cling on to, it's any kind of monster that shows up in the area.
I mean, unfortunately, the evidence does show that does happen. Like
it works, you know. I mean, hell, I've been out to Point Pleasant. I went into the museum. I bought an overpriced T-shirt. You know,
and you enjoyed yourself.
It was absolutely worth it, and I had a good time. Very lovely town full of lovely people. So I don't really blame any town ever, whether it be Skateboard, you know, Point Pleasant, Loveland, you know, whatever, for clinging on to something like that, because it drives tourism. And unfortunately, for a lot of these towns in a post-manufacturing world, you got to do what you can. So,
right.
You know, I've never really looked down upon that. Is it twee? Yes. Is it exploitative? Absolutely. But who's it hurting, really? You know, like...
Right, and if it keeps people looking at the subject, eventually we'll get to the end of it. Now, the thing that starts to develop here is that we've got a monster that does not have the traditional 5-toed prints, okay? There are sometimes people say that it has 4 toes. Most of the time it's 3. Now, one of the other things in the interview that I kind of want to bring up is that there's a strong possibility that the 3-toed indentations are actually 4-toed prints with a vestigial 4th thumb kind of thing, kind of more like what you would see in a chimp or like a great ape, more than so than what we see in our modern footprints. Because there are some plaster cast prints of the Honey Island Swamp Monster where you can see that little vestigial 4th indentation. So there's really 3 primary toes that make the print, then the 4th one off to the side kind of just sits there. Mm-hmm. Now, you've got a large hairy bipedal hominid looking thing with 4 toes. The other major thing that comes up more than a few times is that this thing has a baboon-like appearance, like a large mane around its head, a long, distinct snout. Even Harland Ford said that when he seen this thing, what made it very distinct to him and what he noticed first was how large and pronounced the snout of it was. He originally thought it was a hog.
Snout!
Yeah.
Snout, that's a very important word. You don't hear that when people, you know, talk about Squatch.
No, you don't. The funnier part about the whole thing to me was he said, I thought it was a hog until it stood upright and walked away. That's crazy. Like, I've never heard that in a Bigfoot encounter, okay? I've heard bear,
right.
I've heard monkey, I've heard gorilla, I've heard man. I've never heard a wild hog, okay?
Right.
That means to me that the snout is important, right? And it comes up multiple times, all right? The other thing that we really need to get into is that there is a higher frequency of aggressive encounters with this thing than other areas, okay?
Okay, yeah, and this is where I would like to jump in, because, you know, you've been... so, obviously, when it comes to the basic profile of Sasquatch behavior, generally they tend to be very avoidant. They might do... intimidation or repulsive behavior, but it is very rare they directly confront anybody in their territory. Paralleling, maybe, if it's a particularly territorial one, but, you know, we're talking about the usual rock-tossing calls, you know, all that good stuff. You know, you don't hear stuff about, like, bluff charges, wanton attacks, nothing like that. It's like, that's why the Ape Canyon incident is so famous, because, like, there's not... it's an incredibly sensational story, but also because there's not really any other tale of Bigfoot where they were so aggressive and militant.
I would argue maybe the Siege of Zenobia, but that is a episode for itself right there.
The Siege of Zenobia is its own weird thing that's going on, and I still think that's a very, I mean, this is an ongoing thing, and it's, details are like, I don't know, that's so.
We need to do an episode on it for sure.
Yeah.
I do think that you are correct, though. It's like you don't get aggression out of a typical Bigfoot encounter unless you show it. Or there are a lot of times where if you have a gun, or if you're trying to fish, doing something that takes from their calorie count, they tend to be a little more aggressive. That's understandable. Right. That's why there's a lot of Native American legends that's like tell of whenever you see these things or if you smell these things and you're fishing or you're hunting, you leave some of your catch or some of your hunt behind for them as a sort of tribute, because they looked at them a lot like spirit or forest guardians in a way. Some of it more spiritual, some of it more physical. It kind of depends on who you talk to. Here, though, we're talking about a lot of people coming in, seeing wild animal kills where they're just eviscerated, for lack of a better phrase, and there's nothing eaten off of them. There's one guy that he's a part of a research group in the area. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but like when he was talking to MK Davis, he was talking about how whenever they come up on activity around this thing and they find wild animal kills, it's not eaten.
Right.
That is also very different than the typical Bigfoot profile, where these things, if they're killing it, they're more than likely eating it. Like most of the time, that's what's happening, right? This is seeming a little bit more like pleasure killing, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah!
And that is also indicative of a Gugwe, not a Bigfoot. Like, that's more of the legends, where these things, the name literally translates to face eater, so, like, I don't know what people are expecting out of something with that kind of a name. Now, the next thing that really kind of bugs it for me is that, remember that Ted Williams guy that was on In Search Of that I was talking about, that he made this report where he goes in, he's trying to set trout lines, right? So this guy's like a hunter-trapper type guy, goes in on his boat, and for anybody that doesn't know what a trout line is, you tie a long, heavy, either cable, cord, or fishing line across between two trees along the bank of a river or an estuary, something like that. Somewhere where you know fish are going to pool up at, or whatever wildlife you're looking for. And then you set hooks with bait, and then you just leave. And then you come back the next day, you got dinner.
Yeah.
It's like one of the oldest fishing techniques in America, probably, and really across the world, honestly. While this man, Ted Williams, was out looking for a place to set up his trot lines, he sees two of these things swimming across the river. Now that I'm paraphrasing it, like, he actually has a real in-depth interview on In Search Of. I'll put links to it, and I'll maybe even put a little bit of snippet up here, because it's a pretty interesting little interview. The biggest thing is about this whole situation is that after he went on this interview of In Search Of, right, where he put in his testimony, he walked in home, he went back to his life of setting trot lines in the swamp. He disappeared.
Yeah, no, this was the bit you told me about that made me go, wait, what? Because, first off, obviously, it's kind of alarming when somebody just outright disappears abruptly from, just anywhere. There's a part of me that, of course, is a little skeptic, because, going off on your own into the swamp can result in all kinds of things happening.
Definitely.
I don't want to immediately jump to the conclusion that he got by the swamp monster.
Me neither. It is the most, what's the word? It's got the hook for the legend.
It's the most fantastical, like, oh my gosh, kind of story for sure.
I think the other part that's interesting is that I couldn't find it in either Mississippi or Louisiana's database for missing persons. However, there is a possibility that the disappearance happened before all of this was uploaded digitally as a practice. So it could be in type somewhere. Not entirely sure. However, this man's boat was never found. None of his gear was ever found. He wasn't found. Just gone. Could also have just, did what every man really kind of feels like doing primordially whenever he's not feeling great. Just, screwing off into the woods somewhere for the rest of the time.
Right.
It could have just been that. That's possible. Definitely looks like the type to make that happen. Like, he could do that if he wanted to. I'm willing to put some money on it. But, one reason or another, this guy goes on, takes an interview about these creatures. Now he's gone. And no one knows where he is. They just know that he went out to set his trot lines again one day. Which, to be clear, setting your trot lines is different than going and getting your trot lines in the actual practice of it. So, like, let's just say he's out there hunting alligators. Turns out this man's an alligator hunter, okay? So, if he's hunting for gators, what he's doing is he's putting these big old barbed hooks on there. And he's putting whole chickens soaked in, putrefying liquid in order to get the scent out there. That's what a lot of people do because it's cheaper. Now, when you catch a gator, that's a payday whenever you're doing that. That's a good return. The problem is when you're an older man like that and you get a really big gator, you better be a good shot. You better be quick.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
Because that thing is a lot bigger than you, and hopefully that boat's big enough to handle it. What if he got a big one? Well, the problem with all that is that he's going out to set his trap lines. He's not going to retrieve them. Now, he might have had a couple of trout lines out, or he could, depending on the regulations in the area, who knows? He might have had to have them in, take them out, have them in, take them out. He might not have been able to have a layered trout line system in place where he's always got something in the water. Not entirely sure. Doesn't seem like that information can really be gleaned at this point. So it's kind of neither here nor there. But I think it kind of also lends to the fact that the narrative around this thing isn't necessarily Bigfoot. It's more than likely Gugwe. Okay? Because the only other guy, the only dude in search of, the only other guy that I've ever heard of that disappeared, let's just say there's never really been anything about it. There's never been a missing persons case. There's never even really been a name associated with it. Remember that report in Alaska that we talked about? How, like, these guys were looking for a missing son, and they found his tracks up against a tree and a bunch of Bigfoot tracks surrounding the tree, and he was missing. So they just wrote him off as dead. Like, they didn't even include the son's name in the report. Like, that's hard for me to verify anything, This dude literally has his freaking mug sitting here on In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, okay? This is about as real a dude as a real dude gets, okay? This dude definitely existed, at least. Now, apparently he's gone. So, that's interesting, at least to me, because a lot of times when you get these missing person cases related with Bigfoot, you don't get any veracity to the fact that these people even existed at all. This guy at least existed. So, we're going to look into that. I do think that's also worth its own episode. So, let's move on, alright?
You're right.
Let's get into another reason why I think that this is something else entirely. Now, in order to do that, I got to utilize my new technology here, where, okay, we got it. Sorry, still utilizing the tech here. Let me get myself reoriented. Alright, so what we got here is a little bit of an audio analysis, where in these shorter videos that I've talked about before, we've got a couple of different things happening in the Louisiana area that makes me think that we're not necessarily looking at stuff Bigfoot related all the time. Because as you would imagine, with anything this big, the roaming range would have to be bigger, right? In order to support the amount of calories necessary for survival. Now, the other thing about this whole Bigfoot Gugwe discussion is like, well, do we have any audio, right? Because there's a lot of times that you get audio, you get visual reports, you get everything, right? You get roadside sightings. That's why we call these things Bigfoot hotspots, whenever we find an area that has everything, right? Now, in order to kind of get a little bit deeper in with this hypothesis, I was looking around. Now, there's a couple of things different with Gugwe audio, allegedly, that you get than Bigfoot audio. Now, according to some circles, Kaz, do you know that most whistling is actually a Gugwe and not a Bigfoot?
No, I did not.
At the very least, they prefer whistling over the long siren howls that we're more familiar with as a primary form of communication. Now, there's another thing that I'm going to show you right here. Now, a couple episodes ago, short episodes ago, we talked about Liddyville, Louisiana, okay? And why this is different. Now, there's another recording that's a little bit farther up the Panhandle area, or the water basin. And, Kaz, you're going to like this. It's Nawak. They got something.
Yeah, Nawak, let's go! One of our favorite groups. Oh, all right, popping off for this. We love you, North American Wood Ape Conservancy. These guys are probably as legit as it gets. I probably just peaked the audio doing that, and I don't fucking care. This is like, oh my god, yes!
So, both of these, like the BFRO and then Nawak, both got something that I found interesting, okay? Now, these things don't exactly sound and, like, look the same on spectrogram analysis, which we'll get into in a second, but I don't necessarily think we're looking at Bigfoot either, because I've never really seen this in Bigfoot-related areas, but there's more frequency of Gugwe activity here in this part of Louisiana, as it seems. And so we've got Liddyville, which is not exactly in the Louisiana swamp, or the Honey Island swamp area, it's north of it. However, roaming ranges included, populations included. I think it's safe to say you probably could get one out there, especially if it's migrating from area to area in search of food or whatever it may need. Let's just look at it. Now, I'm going to bump this audio up because I know for a fact that this thing needs to be bumped up a bit. So, just let me know if you can't hear it, Kaz, okay? The first one that I'm going to show you is the Liddyville, Louisiana recording, okay? This is the BFRO. The second one is going to be the Nawak recording, what they call the X-Roar. Now, I just want to let you hear it and see what you think, okay? Now, I'm going to, like I said, tone this a little bit farther down because I know this gets a little hot, but
What the fuck?
okay, so like I said, the first one, the BFRO found in Louisiana. The second one, Nawak recorded, and I believe that's in Oklahoma. What do you think?
I've never heard anything like that, ever. I've never heard a recording like that in my life. Like, that does not sound remotely like any Sasquatch call I've ever heard. Play that first one again.
Yeah, this one's nuts.
What the fuck? I'm genuinely, like, gobsmacked. I don't know how to... The closest thing I can describe is it sounds like a tire screeching, and even then, that's not quite right.
Exactly. Like, I've ran this by multiple people, and I've even tried to lead them with that. I was like, doesn't that kind of sound like a tire to you? And they're like, not quite, but maybe. They're like, but not really? And I'm like... And then I show them where it came from. They're like, oh, that's really weird. and they see BFRO on it. And they're like, oh.
Well, can you play that for me one more time?
Yeah,
I just want to hear it again. Wow. There's a couple of things that stick out to me particularly about this call. It sounds like it's escalating in pitch.
Right. Like, whatever it's doing, when it's ending its call, it's actually contracting and pushing through with its vocals. Kind of like how you're trained to in, like, band class. If you're trying to finish a note whenever you're running low on air, or you're running a really long pitch and you've got to finish strong with it, you're pushing, right? And it really kind of sounds like whatever is doing this, if it's a thing making the call, is that it sounds like it's pushing through, or at the very least the acoustics of the area freaking through this thing. Like, because I would say, to me, the spectrogram doesn't really pick it up, but I do hear a little bit of echo reverberation, a hair, not a whole lot. I don't think that accounts for this freaking wall. Now I'm gonna like highlight this here, Cassie. That I've never seen that before, as far as like a Bigfoot thing goes. Okay.
No. Yeah, no.
That's weird.
The sound print of it is completely different from Sasquatch calls as well. That's what makes it even stranger.
But we still have the same part of it right here that shows that you've got multiple vocal cords, or at the very least multiple pitches harmonizing at the same time. So it's either infrasound or multiple vocal cords, either of which is not something that you hear of in a lot of different things. Definitely not in any native species in the area. The other thing that I can confidently say, that is not a wolf call. We've already went over wolves in the Deep South. Like, that's not it. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and redo the Nawak recording, okay? Because
yeah,
I want you to deep dive that one a little bit, and then I'll go ahead into what I was talking about a little bit more. All right. What do you think of this one?
I don't know. I really don't. Play it again for me.
So this one is a little more technical, okay?
Yeah. There's obviously a lot more noise.
There is, and to be frank, okay, a lot of places like to clean the crap out of this audio before they show it to their audience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't. I kind of like raw dogging it, okay? And why? Because I am not looking at unfiltered stuff, right? Like, I'm also doing this in order to make sure that we're seeing what we're seeing, right? Now, there's also something that I want to make sure I'm hearing. Let's listen to this one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I discussed how this works a little bit in the St. Louis County video. For anybody that doesn't know how a lot of these long-term audio recorders work, what they do is that they ambiently sit around and they have detectors that wait for vibrations to come through. And when it sets off a certain decibel range, then it starts recording, and then it shuts back down again. And then whenever you hear something else, it'll start doing it again. Okay? Mm-hmm. That is why you get to see this right here. Because this, when you're not necessarily seeing it all the way through, I'm not thinking that is necessarily somebody splicing something together in attempt to hoaxing something, because the through line's here too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
what I think it is you're looking at either the insects reattacking their chirping, which can happen, but I think it could also be whenever these guys were actually compiling the recording together for something that they could package and have someone listen to and not take 15 minutes to listen to, it ended up kind of overlapping a little bit whenever they were cutting all the dead space out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't think that that's necessarily tampering with evidence. I think that's probably repackaging. However, when it comes to infrasound and how that this, or not infrasound, but the what's the word I'm looking for here? When it comes to the sonic fingerprint that we're looking for, this more closely lines up with gorillas and panthers, or cougars, actually. All three of those species have been seen and recorded making similar calls to this. Do you know that gorillas screamed like that?
No, I did not.
Like,
I've never really heard gorilla vocalization, like, at all.
To be fair, they can be loud, but here's what's important, okay? It's not hitting that hertz range at that distance. That's important. The cougars, they're not hitting it at that range. They're not hitting literally basically 4,000 hertz all the way down to 400 hertz. That is a crazy vocalization range for anything. And for it to be as far away as it is and still picking up at those frequency ranges, that indicates a large volume of air, pushing a lot of vibrations. So it's safer to rule out that this was a smaller mammal, because this thing was at a distance and it was making a lot of noise. And that's something that we're trying to establish a little bit more here, is that distance when it comes to audio recording and looking at it in a spectrogram is terribly important. Like, I'm pretty confident in saying that this isn't a cougar because of the distance and because of the hertz ranges.
Yeah, no. I mean, it'd be really easy to mistake it for a cougar or a mountain lion or whatever term you want to call it. Because, like, if you listen to their calls, they're very, like... But there's more of, like, a... This is an incredibly unscientific way of describing it, but they sound more like a shriek. This is more like a wail. Does that make any sense?
No, I agree. Now, they can have a wide range. I have actually seen, and like Nawak put up a similar call that cougars do make. So, it does make sense that people would look at that and be like, I don't know. However, it is definitely a larger individual than what you can record at similar ranges. Because that's the other part of audio recording that makes it hard, is that it's hard for me to look at something at a certain range, making a certain call, and something making a certain call, but at a different range, and being confident in saying that this is the same thing exactly. And I definitely have a hard time saying that this is the same individual if it's making this at different ranges, that they make completely different things on the spectrogram. Now, so far, are we holding up together, Kaz? Am I making sense?
No, absolutely.
So,
I'm still following.
What if I told you, to put the cherry on top, okay, that the Honey Island Swamp Monster has in its possession the title of oldest video footage of a Bigfoot adjacent or Bigfoot cryptid in history? It beats Patterson-Gimlin.
No!
It does. I'm 100% serious. So, apparently, this was something that Harland Ford kept in his possession and ended up, when he passed away, his family was clearing out the attic and came across this 8mm film. Okay? It's that old. It's not even the 16mm that the Patterson-Gimlin film was shot on. It's 8mm. They cut the 16mm in half and sold it as 8mm. So, It's crazy. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to go ahead and get that together really quick so I can show you what I consider to be one of my favorite things. Are you ready for this? I don't know if you're ready for this.
Yeah. Show it to me. Oh my goodness.
The first ever actual footage of a Bigfoot is blob squatch footage. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
But isn't that wild? Like, that is crazy. I didn't know that. Like, everybody always thinks of, like, why is, like, the first ever film of Bigfoot the best we ever got? And it's not. It's not the first. I mean, it's still the best, but it's not the first. And it also kind of makes me feel a little bit better about all these people that are out blob squatching. You know what I mean? Like, they're going out and filming it on whatever they've got, and it didn't come up that great. Well, that guy was doing the same thing. And I don't know. It doesn't look that distinct for anybody to really be able to say, hey, that's exactly a person or a Gugwe or a Bigfoot or whatever adjacent cryptid you're looking at. But we do got something different, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I apologize for not really having a lot of commentary on this one, because you did a lot of the groundwork for this one. And I'm trying to get a word in edgewise, but, like, I don't want to be adding fluff to this episode. You know?
But what do you think? Like, were you convinced at all? Do you feel like there could be any room?
Yeah.
Not really? You're feeling pretty solid.
Wait, sorry, what?
So,
I mean, this is a pretty solid, I mean, definitely a lot to talk about here. I mean, the audio.
The audio's the weirdest part about it, I think.
The audio is the weirdest part. I can't wrap my head around it.
No, like, of all of the things that I've found so far, like, most people be like, the missing person. Like, yes, people going missing's bad, right? Like, people are glued to the idea that missing 411 has something to do with Bigfoot. There's a whole other discussion concerning that. We have a whole opinion about that. We might make a video about it, we might not. You might have to subscribe and find out, okay? So, that's going to be the new running joke. Make a missing 411 video.
Oh, God.
We've got some apps.
We're no research. We'll just make things up and misrepresent everything.
Yeah.
Because that's what David Paulides would want, baby.
Half read the newspaper. Circle it. It just reminds me of, like, the inside joke for MF Doom fans that, like, anytime he heard the word, oh no, we're doomed, he had to, like, literally run to the desk and start writing notes. Like, that's how I feel about it. It's the same energy. It's goofy.
Listen, man, I can write a missing 411 book by getting a piece of Swiss cheese and tossing it on a newspaper article about a missing child. Like,
to be fair with you, we were overlooking the map with missing 411 and Bigfoot, like, hotspots and everything, and, like, we found that it's kind of there.
I mean, they are real disappearance cases that he looked up. Right. Like, they did happen. But, like, a lot of them, it's just that I look at it more as us using collected data rather than it representing the veracity or accuracy of his statements.
I think that what it really does is that it brings topics like individual cases like that to light, where that's how you really get those cases solved, is that you get them in the hands of everybody on the planet. Like, someone's going to know something. That's how that works. That's why those work so well. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go in there and think, oh, it's alien abductions, okay?
Right.
I think we do probably need to do an aliens episode. I think we need at least one. We need to talk about the congressional hearings. I think that would clear some air, and I think that would be a fun non-Bigfoot related episode for us to talk about.
I actually am took extensive notes about the very first hearing.
We need to go through all of them, though. Like,
there's a lot of interesting stuff that has come up in the last few years about the government and UAPs and all that good stuff.
And I know it might get people a little on edge about this, but I've been working on a long-term project besides the Bigfoot audio project. The other thing is, if a government conspiracy exists, how would you find it? How would you uncover it? Like, what's the framework? What's the play? So,
I mean, I can already give you a general description of, like, what the conspiracy is.
well, we've got our opinion, right? So the other idea was...
I mean, I watched the hearing, so I have a pretty solid opinion of it.
Well, I'm talking more about the Bigfoot side, a Bigfoot government cover-up. Okay.
Oh, a Bigfoot cover-up.
So,
Yeah, I need some time to really... I mean, my opinion on it has always been it's very mundane.
we've got our opinion with it, right? And I think it's worth its own video.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, I've got to do legwork, right? I've got to actually find that there might be something to this idea. And I'm starting to get a lot more interesting stuff compiled. I'll talk to you about it here in a second after we're done with the episode, because like I said, it's super cool.
Regardless, I think it's time to wrap up here for sure.
So guys, if you liked what you heard tonight, like, comment, subscribe, share us to somebody that you know. And remember guys, if you've heard it here, then I guess you've heard it everywhere else. I don't know. I didn't know. I kind of scuffed that one. But I'm Jaster with C-Bro. And
I'm Kaz, also with C-Bro.
And you all have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.